Hey, Clemson family, I promise not to tell Daniel that I don't know what he's good at in this episode because I don't think he's Paul Feinbaum, and I sure hope I'm not Lane Kiffin.
I'm Daniel Shirley. I don't get that reference because I don't listen to Paul Feinbaum. So we'll have to move on from that pretty quickly and talk about some Clemson running backs and preview Wake Forest.
Yeah, a little rift on the Feinbaum show apparently from SEC Media Days. You should go check it out if you haven't seen it. The look on Feinbaum's face is pretty funny. I'm Bill Zimmerman. Welcome to the Reign Supreme All podcast, where we are nice to each other. We've made it through more than 100 episodes by being that way. You can check out youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff for the proof. Everything is there. You can also catch us on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Most of our episodes are there. We went dark there for a little while because of just prioritizing our time. Social media at Clemson Kickoff. But get in on YouTube, make your comments. That's where you can be heard by the most people and join our community. So we are going through position rankings for the season. We are in the middle of the pack, and that means we have gotten to the running backs. The gosh, well, not the best group on the offensive unit. I think there's one more to go,
Yep.
but a very good group, and it's certainly led at the top by Phil Mafah.
It is, and I shouldn't have taken a shot at Paul Feinbaum. I know who Paul Feinbaum is. I just don't watch his show because I'm so wrapped up in my own career at the Athletic and doing this and doing my radio shows. So, um, I Maffa, if we ranked individual players, Maffa might be one, two, three on this roster, right? I mean, if we did that, he
Yeah.
might be that high on this roster. And as far as most important players, most talented players, but I think the group drops a little bit in the position rankings because there's some uncertainty behind him. But there's no doubt that Phil Mafah is the guy at running back. Bill, and I don't know if you heard this, but CJ Spiller had a great comparison for his career, right? Of he shared carries the first few years with James Davis. And that's what Phil Mafah did with Will Shipley. And then CJ's last year, who CJ is now Phil Mafah's position coach, he had the ball to himself pretty much as the running back. And we saw the year he had. And that's really parallel to what Phil Mafah has done in his career. And if you're a Clemson fan, what you hope happens in his senior year. If he has that kind of year, I mean, watch out.
Yeah, and you're mentioning those comments from Tuesday when Dabo Sweeney and I think all the assistants met with
Yep.
the local beat media. They've got ACC Media Days coming up next week as we record this. Dabo Sweeney also had some really positive things to say about Mafah, sort of embracing that role of being the lead guy in the running back room, using his voice and making his presence felt and kind of serving as someone who can serve an example to those younger guys in that room. I think Keith Adams has a little more experience than the others, but it is a very young room. And that was good to hear. And quite frankly, maybe Mafah was having trouble using his voice if he wanted to because Shipley was so exuberant as a leader in that room and on that offense. I don't know if you had room for two and you don't want to create dissent there. So Mafah may have kind of muted his voice a little bit in order for the room to have a better synchronicity, better feel to it. So he clearly is ready and able to step up in that role. And I am really excited about Mafah as lead back because I think when we saw that last year, late in the season, Shipley injured. And missed the Notre Dame game, and then Mafah kind of became that lead guy. Shipley kind of became the more change of pace guy. I think Mafah liked that role. I think he embraced more carries, and I think it just worked better with the two of them. We'll get into this a little bit later, but I think they've got to find someone else to go with him. It is a crowded battle to make the two deep, and that was something else that Dabo Sweeney talked about.
He did. And Bill, when's the last time Clemson had this?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, even when they had Travis Etienne, you know, they had, a guy behind him who it felt like, okay, he's the next in line. And it doesn't feel like that right now. It feels like there's good talent, but somebody is going to have to emerge to be the number two. Lynn J. Dixon was the number two behind Travis Etienne for a couple of years. And it felt like there was a clear line in the sand of Travis is one, Lynn Jace too, and then it was the group. Well, now it's Mafah and then the group. So it was interesting to hear Dabo say, I think they like the group. I think each one of them brings something to this group and bring something to the offense. But there's not a clear number two, and that's what we're going to find out probably in the preseason and maybe even into what 3 or 4 games into the season.
Yep. One of those is Keith Adams Jr., a very familiar name to fans of our age and hopefully a little younger as well. His father was a standout linebacker for the Tigers. And Adams maybe is a little bit like Quadzilla, Dominique Thomas, who transferred out. Adams got the nickname of Sledgehammer, apparently, according to Coach Dabo Swinney, and I think a couple of others have talked about that as well. He just brings a very physical bull rush, maybe Raymond Priester kind of style is his ceiling.
Yeah, maybe. And if his ceiling is Raymond Priester, that's pretty good, right?
Yeah,
Now that was a different style of football back then, and
sure.
obviously Raymond Priester had a lot of carries on those legs and that body during his Clemson career. But the Mafah's a physical back too. There's no doubt about that. But I think Mafah can be a little more elusive, a little quicker than maybe people think he is. I think he
I do
showed
too.
that in the Notre Dame game. He showed it in the Kentucky game that the long touchdown run, or what, about 30-yard touchdown run in the fourth quarter, showed that. Now he also showed his power in that game with the shorter scoring runs. But look, I think that Adams definitely brings a power focus to the running back group, and again a little bit more of a veteran group than the other guys in the position.
Yep. So you get into a couple of second year guys after that. Jay Haynes certainly flashed last year, but now he's recovering from injuries. But he definitely has that talent to be a change of pace kind of back.
Well, he's got to be healthy,
Yeah,
right? And that's what we heard the coaches talk about this on Tuesday, and I think I listened to all of the coaches, all of their interviews, or at least parts of every coach. And when Haynes's name came up, it was, well, he's got to play, and he hasn't played yet, and or not a lot. And it's almost like every time they get ready to take him to the next step, he's a little dinged up, and that's the biggest piece for him.
and then Jarvis Green would be the other second year guy. He just seems to be kind of all purpose, a little bit of everything. I don't see any flaws in his game, but it would be
Yeah,
nice to see something jump out and say, wow, okay, that's what sets him apart from this pack and puts him in the deserved spot of number two.
yeah, a little more speed with these two guys than the first two, and I think that's what you kind of need to see. But I think Green has a chance. If you said overall all around, I think Green has the chance to be the number two. Again, we just got to see it happen.
Yeah. And then the true freshman coming in, David Eziomume. I have heard it pronounced that way in other interviews. I hope I'm getting it right. Definitely not my forte. I know I did check the spelling, and that is our background, me and Daniel. So I got that right. He certainly showed some quickness. He's an early enrollee, so he got into that freshman game. I like his quick feet. I like a lot of his talent. His clips were great in high school, but as we also saw in the spring game, he's kind of got to get a few things down about how to be effective in the college game.
Well, it takes time,
Yep,
right? I mean, you go back and look. Remember how much did Travis Etienne play early in his freshman year? Not really till that Louisville game
right.
when he really broke out, and then after that, he became a bigger piece to that offense that year, his freshman year. So it's going to take some time. I think that's the luxury of having Mafah, a guy who's taken on the leadership role, and a guy who can lead by example at practice every day and in the games as well.
I sure wouldn't mind though if Easy MMA, Bryant Wesco, and TJ Moore
Oof.
kind of rekindled that embarrassment of riches quote that ETN had
Yeah.
late in that Louisville game when he got in. And the fun thing is, I still remember the quote where he bounced that run outside and then came back to the sideline after scoring and apologized to Tony Elliott because he had picked the wrong gap. And it was, of course, hey, you score, it's going to be forgiven. So the thing we haven't gotten into yet is who's going to pick up the blitz. Mafah, I think, will be in for most of the snaps. Now we've seen him have the physical ability to block guys. It's more about understanding situations. Who should he be picking up? Where should he be looking to pick a guy up? And should he be bailing to kind of beat the blitz behind them by being open for a passing route rather than trying to get a chip on a guy or trying to square a guy up?
Well, this is again, I always go back to Travis Etienne. Why did he not get on the field earlier? Because he didn't know how to pick up the blitz. He couldn't catch the ball. Not an all around back. I think that Mafah is an all around back. And if you said what's the one area that he can improve the most last year, it was this. I thought he caught the ball fine when they threw it to him. I think he has the skills to do that. But we saw a couple of times where, and Bill, we're not in the room. We don't know who was supposed to pick up what blitz. Did the offensive lineman slide to the wrong spot? We don't know all that stuff.
And we
But
say that a
just
lot here, yeah.
right. I don't and nobody does unless
Yeah.
you're in that room. Nobody knows. I mean, you can guess, but was the guard supposed to slide left or right? And did the tackle do the right thing? What about the tight end? We don't know that stuff. But there were a couple of times last year on the outside looking in where you went, oh, Mafah picked up the wrong blitz, or didn't pick up the blitz and went out for a pass instead of picking up the blitz. That was from my mind, when it was announced that he was coming back. If you just said, Daniel, what's the best thing or the biggest thing he needs to improve on, that would have been it. And that's small. It's not like he was awful at it. It's just that's the one nitpicky thing I would have picked out about him.
Yeah. Uh, let's talk about CJ Spiller, who's in the thumbnail out front for this episode. If you are catching us at youtube.com/Clemson Cookoff, where most of you are, I've got one top job for him, and it's get a handle on the fumbles.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
got to be cleaner receptions of handoffs. I think a lot of fumbles kind of were charged to Klubnik that were sort of they would have been half sacks if it would have been two defensive guys closing in on the quarterback, right? But I believe there were 10 fumbles charged to Klubnik last year and 4 charged to Mafah out of the 22 that the offense had.
too many fumbles.
Yeah.
What it wasn't even, we talk about the turnovers last year. It wasn't interceptions. There weren't that many interceptions, per the number of passes. There really weren't many at all based on that. But the fumbles were just absolute killers. And, you look at the Duke game, the Miami game, the Florida State game, all of those games turned on fumbles. I just, that can't happen again. Now, how do you stop it? I don't know, Bill, because I don't think you want to go into practice preaching it and preaching it and preaching it and having it in guys' heads too much and thinking about it too much, because then you're not playing free and you're not playing loose and you're not at your best at the best of your ability. But it has to be addressed after what we saw last year. Last year, those fumbles kept Clemson out of the playoff, or kept them at least out of the ACC championship game.
Right.
And if you win the ACC championship game, who knows what happens? But if you go back and look at the losses, you can point to the fumbles as the reason they lost all 4 of those games. And we're not making excuses, because those things happened. You have to own it and keep it from happening again going into 2024.
Yeah, I always liked how Jimmy Johnson talked about it when he was winning a bunch of Super Bowls with Dallas Cowboys over your Niners, and was talking about protect the football, secure the football. That was his message. The message wasn't avoid fumbles. He stressed the positive and the thing that you should be doing. So hopefully that'll be discussed a lot in the locker room. So then does a change of pace, pardon me, back emerge out of all these guys? I think the guy with the most speed and experience combo would be Jay Haynes, but who knows, with a lot of these guys being younger, or maybe you look for the change of pace to be more physical with Adams.
I think it's Haynes if he's healthy.
Yeah,
I really do, Bill. I look, when he played last year, he flashed, and I just, when he was on the field, it was, and I'm not saying he's ETN, but you saw a guy hit the hole.
Yeah.
And what did we always say about Travis Etienne? He didn't dance. He hit the hole.
Yeah.
And like you said, sometimes it might not have been the right hole early in his career, but when he went through it, he went 100 miles an hour, and he always did. He ever feel like he didn't get the most out of a carry?
Right.
I don't, that, and I'm sure there were times he lost yards, but if -1 was the most he was going to get out of it, it feels like he got -1 because he hit the hole. And I think that if Haynes is healthy, he's this guy for that role.
We'll see if he can pull it away. I think that the biggest X factor in the room is, can we see more of those Mafah breakaway runs like he
Yep.
had against Notre Dame? Can he get enough of a crease in that offensive line often enough, and some outright holes would sure be nice. Matt Luke is going to help in that regard. I'm not going to expect a huge turnaround in that offensive line, but I do expect improvement out of them. So what is Mafah going to be able to do? Because he's got the physicality. Maybe he's not that bowling ball kind of running back like we talked about with Priester, but he's certainly got the physical ability to get through tackles if he gets to the second level and beyond.
Well, what's been missing with the offense the last couple of years?
Big
Big
plays.
plays.
Yeah.
Big plays. And that's not just big plays down the field. That's in the running game too. We love Will Shipley, but how many 20, 30-yard runs did Will Shipley had?
Right.
Not a bunch. You missed those big hit plays from Travis Etienne. Those have got to come back as part of this offense.
I am pretty high on this running backs room, and I think they are going to be a big key. If it's going to be a little bit of symbiosis there, if they can run the ball a little better, defenses will have to pull in and respect the run, which will open things up for the passing game. I also think about it as go back and reference those Cowboys teams under Jimmy Johnson. They used to throw a lot to Michael Irvin and Alvin Harper and Kmart and Jay Novacek to open things up for Emmitt Smith. They would
Right.
throw early, and that would set up the run. So either way you look at it, a better running game certainly can be in the cards for Clemson this year, and I think they've got the capable players to do it, especially the guy at the top, Phil Mafah.
As long as the line does its job, this group, I think, can get the job done. I love, this group. I do. It felt weird ranking him lower
Yeah.
than some of these other groups because of Phil Mafah. I think Mafah has a chance to be a star in college football this year. I really do. If you listed, quote, breakout stars in college football, I think Phil Mafah has a chance to be one of those guys, but that line has got to do its job.
Yeah. YouTube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Get in there and comment, talk to us about how you feel about the running backs. And then we will also now get into another opponent preview, and that'll be the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. We are well into the middle of the season for these previews, and Wake Forest kind of fell on hard times last year, but certainly has been a formidable opponent for Clemson through the years at times. I really enjoyed seeing Sam Hartman post on Instagram and other social media about, oh, I'm just sitting here playing EA college football and beating up on Clemson, and a lot of response are like, well, that's what it takes as a video game for you to be able to do it. But there was a shootout just a couple of years ago. There have been other victories by Wake Forest against Clemson, and they have been a much tougher out, I think, in general under head coach Dave Clawson, who is 63 and 61 in the ACC overall, but almost always seem to have something for the Tigers.
Well, and doesn't it feel like he gets the most out of his team every year?
Mm-hmm.
I know they look when I knew what their record was last year, but when I saw it pop up on the screen the other day, I was just like, whoa, wait, 4-8, really? That was the record?
Right.
And 1-7 in the ACC, really? I knew that's what it was, but it's just startling to see that. But Bill, I think 4-8 was the best they could have been last year.
Yeah.
I really do. I thought that when they lose Hartman to go to Notre Dame and he finishes over in his career against Clemson, that took a lot out of their sails offensively. And they had to redo a lot of the things they wanted to get done without him because they had leaned so heavily on him for a couple of years. But Dave Clawson is one of the best coaches, not just in this conference, but in the country. And I know he coaches at Wake, and you look at his record, and it's not that daunting or, shiny or whatever you want to say. But man, that guy can coach football. And it feels like they max out every year. And I don't think 4-8 is where they're going to max out this year.
No, I don't either, and I don't know what that ACC record is going to be, but they've got a higher ceiling than they had last year. Defensive line is keyed by Jasheen Davis on the edge.
Yeah, he's a good player, man. He's a really, really good player. Like he's one of those where you look at a roster and you go, okay, well, which one of these guys could be a pro? And you go, well, really, Wake Forest has pros. Well, yeah, through the years they've had pros, and he's one of those guys I think who's got a chance to do something special. Really, really talented guy on that defensive line.
Then you get into linebackers. Oh, pardon me. Dylan Hazen is the returning leading tackler for the Demon Deacons and will anchor the middle of that defense once again.
Yeah, he's almost kind of the leading tackler by default last year, right? He's a good player, but he didn't have a lot of help on the defense. But having that experience back of what he went through last year should help him be an even better player and help the defense improve because they really need this defense to get better.
One area it is getting better is in experience. They've got a lot of guys who are not, they're not leaning on a lot of freshmen and sophomores. They do have a few transfers, and one of them will be a linebacker alongside A's. And the defensive backfield also has a lot of upperclassmen, and that is led by Evan Slocum, who I believe, if I remember correctly, played nickel and then is moving over to full out safety this year for the Deeks.
Well, he's kind of the epitome of what they want to be, right? Of, not a 5-star or a 4-star, but we're going to recruit you, maybe redshirt you, but you're going to develop in the program. That's what they've kind of become is recruit a class, develop, and then you can really contribute. And I think that's what you're going to see from Evan this year. He's again, really talented player. Bill, I think they've got talent at each position. It's just what kind of depth did they have?
Yeah. Yep. Another transfer coming in, Capone Blue, will be one of their leading corners this year in that secondary. You go to wide receiver now. There's a familiar name, Donovan Green. That is someone who the Tigers tried to recruit at receiver. He missed a lot of time last year, if not the entire season, due to injury, but did a nice job prior to that. 582 yards and 6 TDs 2 years ago. Taylor Morin is probably a Wake Forest version of maybe a Tyler Grisham, could we say, or Adam Humphreys. 5'10", 180, but does nicely in the slot. Got 617 yards receiving there and a couple of TDs.
Well, and we know how they use the receivers, right? In that mesh, that slow mesh offense, they really are trying to get the ball to their receivers, and these are two guys that can catch the ball and get the job done. So, again, it keeps kind of harping on it or repeating myself. Talented guys, where's the depth? And that's what we'll find out for them at that position. And we know they have one of the most inventive offenses in college football. They don't. Who else runs an offense like they run? There's
Right.
not many out there, right?
Nope, that slow mesh attack that they like to use. One of the guys that they'll be running that mesh behind and who needs to provide time for it to happen is Devontae Gordon. He's 6'5", 310. He's a senior. He was third team All ACC 2 years ago, and then they've got 4 juniors lining up alongside him. 3 of the guys on the offensive line are returning starters, so they're going to have a chance to make things improve. Maybe they'll mesh a little better than last year, but I'm sorry, I'll show myself out. So let's move on to running back. Damon Claiborne comes back, 586 yards and 5 touchdowns last year. 5'9", 200, a little bit of a Dominique Thomas type. If you remember him from last year, we just referenced him in the running backs episode earlier, and there will be some other guys splitting carries with him. I think the I'm getting caught up here. Sorry. I think the big headline guy here, maybe for the whole team, is Hank Bachmeier. He's going to replace Mitch Griffiths as the starter at quarterback. Griffiths transferred out. Bachmeier comes in from Boise State. 6'1", 221. He's a senior, and he threw for more than 2,000 yards, 2,058 yards with the Broncos.
He's got some experience, right? Again, here we're talking experienced guy, played a lot of football. I think you kind of have to have experience to run that offense. I know he hasn't been in that offense specifically, but I think we've seen him play some football at Boise State. He's been good at Boise State. We'll see what this staff can do with him. But Bill, I think that, you mentioned the offensive line there. When they've been good, they've had that experienced group up front, and they're starting to get that again this year. Almost like next year's the year, right? When it and again, we know in the portal era, who knows how many of those guys will be back. But if they were building towards a year, it might be next year, but they should be much better this year than they were last year because they've got all that experience on the offensive line and some experience, at these skill positions.
Yeah, and to me, that's the story of this team. I mean, a lot of people are saying that in the portal era, you want to have a team that gets old for you, right? Brings that experience in and can
Yep.
outperform younger teams with a lot more flux on the roster, a lot more change on the roster from one year to the next. This team certainly has that, but you kind of wish they also were a team that had more wins last year and able in order to see them return to that competitive level that put them in the ACC championship game just a few years ago under Clawson.
Yeah, it's again experience. Where's the depth is going to be a big key. They have the experience, but can they get back to what Wake Forest had become for a couple of years? Last year was a down year. There's no denying that.
Right.
That's not what that's the Wake Forest you and I grew up on, right? Of those kinds of years. That's not what the expectations are with this coaching staff. And I think you'll see them bounce back nicely. Is that winning 10 games? No, but I think you'll see them get back into a bowl game. They'll be back to being more competitive each week and being more of what we think of Dave Clawson's Wake Forest teams.
Yeah. It's by mid-season we'll see what this team is made of, right? Will some of the younger guys have
Yes.
displaced some of those veterans who were a bigger part of that 4-8 disappointment last year? Will the transfers like Bachmeyer be figuring things out? Will he be good in that mesh system? Or will Michael Kern have to step in or someone else step in and guide the offense? But they will have had time to figure it out by the time they face Clemson. And the Tigers are going to have to be careful not to let this become sort of a trap game and upend a season in a way that would just kind of be to me like that NC State or Miami lost last year if they were to stub their toe and drop this one. The Tigers should be favored by more than one score, and if they pay attention, they do the things that they want to do. If they're healthy, all those things add up to probably being pretty close to whatever the spread is going to be. So catch the rest of our previews. We like calling them the 10 for 24 previews. We got 10 items on each opponent. Then we do another series, 10 items on each position room in the Clemson locker room. And we will keep those coming to try to wrap things up. Also, maybe our next episode or two episodes out, we'll have a little recruiting news. We're kind of watching on some things bubbling out there. Follow us on Twitter at Clemson Kickoff. That's where we'll have the most breaking updates for you. But if something happens, we'll be sure to get in here as soon as possible and share our thoughts on it. It's kind of neat that we're going to be watching a few recruitments with some of the prospects who are out there, big time prospects, as we're finally getting some news that will be related to the season, including next week ACC Media Days as well.
Yeah, we're getting close, right? I mean, to me, for Clemson fans, the start of the season is when Dabo Swinney and the assistant coaches have their their gathering with the new local media. They did that last Tuesday. That means we're getting there, and media days next week, and recruiting and fall camp and all that stuff. We are really getting close to that season opener against Georgia.
Can't wait. That's going to be one heck of a tilt there at Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. Noon kick for the Tigers, which is kind of unusual in week one, but I think maybe it'll be good for the fans to be able to get in and out there. We also, by the way, ClemsonKickoff.com, we keep the kickoff times right there at the top of the page. Anytime you need to know throughout the season, what time is that game? Just type in what time is Clemson kickoff in any search browser, and one of the top results there will be ClemsonKickoff.com. So we try to make sure we stay on top of that for the fans. And until our next episode, whatever the topic may be, more previews or maybe some breaking news, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.